على محمد وعليه الطيبين الطاهرين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So this is in essence part 2 of Sura Al Kahf. In the first part we looked at ayah 1 to 49, and in essence we looked at the 3 sections. The first section was that the Quran is not complicated or flawed. It's not deviated, but literally not complicated or flawed. And it's basically telling you and me to trust in Him and the ability to see His invisible role in everything. And this is what the whole thing will be about. We looked at Sura Al Kahf, and this was ayah 9 to 31, where it was a test of faith basically. But we found that where they were frightened, we find Allah's help comes across. Then we went to the owners of the 2 gardens, and here we find somebody who's really smug, really arrogant basically, and how his garden is destroyed. So that's ayah 32 to 49. We're now going to go into the 4th section, which is ayah 50 to 53. A lot of times this is not looked upon as a story in Sura Al Kahf. I'll take it as one because it's a test of obedience, and it talks about Prophet Adam and Shaitan. So most of us know this story, and if you were to look at the Quran as a whole, you will find this story appears at exact intervals. So if you were to finish the Quran in a week, you would get this story once a week. So it's sort of spaced out 7 times. So most of us know this. وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ, when we told the angels, أُسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ, do sajda to Adam. فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ, they all did sajda except Iblis. كان من الجن, he was of the jinn. Very clear here, he was of the jinn. فَفَسَكَ عَنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّهِ, so basically his crime was violating the law of Allah, saying no. أَفَتَتَّخِذُونَهُ وَذُرِّيَّتَهُ أَوْلِيَاءَ مِن دُونِي وَهُمْ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ. Allah is saying, and this is the person, this is the jinn, this is the one who disobeyed me, and yet you will still take him and his offsprings or those who are connected to him as friends rather than me, and they are your enemies. Aduun bi'sa lidh-dhalimina badala. What are you doing? So it's a rhetoric question which says, what a terrible alternative you have, what an awful alternative you have. Look at him. And basically, so here I would put in, and I'll show you my journaling bit where I put violated Allah's command. Let me show it to you. Sorry, there you go. So I've put sajda there because he refused, and I've put violated Allah's command over there. Okay. Next ayah. Ma ashhadtuhum khalq as-samawati wal ard. Allah is saying, I did not make them witnesses of the creation of the heavens and the earth. He's talking about false gods. He says, I did not make them a witness on creation. وَلَا خَلَقَ أَنفُسِهِمْ, not even in their own creation were they witnesses. وَمَا كُنْتُ مُتَّخِذَ الْمُضِلِّينَ عَضُدًا. So he's saying, I didn't even lean on them. They weren't a backup. Azuda, that word there, with a vad, azuda, the last word, is your muscle from your shoulder to your elbow. You sort of eternally lean on it, right? So he's saying, I never took any, they weren't my backup. So don't understand why you're taking them as your backup. وَيَوْمَ يَقُولُ, and on the day of judgment, which is talking about here, يَقُولُ, when he shall say, that means when Allah will say, نَادُوا شُرَقَاءِ الَّذِينَ, call those whom you considered to be associated with me. زَعَمْتُمْ فَدَعَوْهُ فَلَمْ يَسْتَجِيبُوا, those who thought were associated with me, he said, فَدَعَوْهُم, they will call them, فَلَمْ يَسْتَجِيبُوا, they won't answer لَهُم, they won't answer them. وَجَعَلْنَا بَيْنَهُمْ مَوْبِقًا, and between them and you there will be a mawbiqa. Wabaqa is a cavity. A mawbiq is a place a cavity where you fall in and you almost certainly die. And Jahannam is known as mawbiqa as well. So Allah is saying that they're not going to be able to do that. It's anybody you associate with Allah, that's why shirk is known as the greatest sin possible. They're not going to answer you. وَرَأَى الْمُجْرِمُونَ النَّارِ, and the guilty, those who are unjust, will see the fire. فَظَنُّوا أَنَّهُمْ مُوَاقِعُهَا, and they will know, they will realize that they are going to, waqa'a is to fall hurt. They will fall hard in it. وَلَمْ يَجِدُوا عَنْهَا مَصْرِفًا, and they will try really hard to turn away from it, but they won't be able to turn away from it, because this is exactly what they did. So it's a recompense for guilt, or recompense for what they did in hurting humanity. I'll see it that way. The next section we're going to look at is now sort of the story finishes, and he talks about what you should follow, the guidance of the Quran. So Allah says, وَلَقَدْ صَرَّفْنَا فِي هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ, we have explained in this Quran, لِلنَّاسِ, for human beings, مِنْ كُلِّ مَثَلٍ. So the way Allah is saying is that we've tasrif, it's like different ways. We've tried different ways of explaining to you the same thing. The basic concepts are Tawheed, divine guidance, and accountability. So he's saying we've explained to you in every different way. But وَكَانَ الْإِنسان, but the human being, أَكْثَرَ شَيْءٍ جَدَلًا, his first impulse is to argue. His first impulse is you debate and be critical and ask why. And that's the thing that he does first. That's the first thing he's going to do. And then Allah says, وَمَا مَنَعَ النَّاسِ, and nothing mana'a, to refuse. Nobody refused human beings, أَن يُؤْمِنُوا, nothing prevented human beings from believing, إِذْ جَاءَهُمُ الْهُدَى, when the guidance came to them. That's number one. وَيَسْتَغْفِرُوا رَبَّهُم, and to ask forgiveness from their Rabb. إِلَّا أَن تَأْتِيَهُمْ سُنَّةُ الْأَوَّلِينَ, except that the same thing will happen to them in the past, basically. أَوْ يَأْتِيَهُمُ الْعَذَابُ قُبُلًا, or the punishment will come face to face. So he says, look at the stories of the past. It's not going to be any different. The consequences are exactly the same, and nothing's stopping you from changing that and believing and asking for forgiveness. وَمَا نُرْسِلُ الْمُرْسِلِينَ, we did not send messengers, إِلَّا مُبَشِّرِينَ, except to give good news, وَمُنذِرِينَ, and to warn. وَيُجَادِلُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, yujadila, again they argue, those who cover up the truth, بِالْبَاطِلِ لِيُدْحِسُوا بِهِ الْحَقَّ وَاتَّخَذُوا آيَاتِي وَمَا أُنذِرُوا هُزُوًا. So dahada, I'm going to go through some words here. So if you look at dahada, liyudhidu, dahada is when you try to argue about something, but it's useless. You have no proof. So basically what Allah is saying, those who covered up the truth try to dismantle the proofs of the religion that the prophets brought, but they didn't have anything there. And then huzwa is, then they thought, when we don't have any clear arguments, maybe we'll get away by making fun of revelation. So they undermined revelation. So I'll put this together. We didn't send messengers except as good news and warning, but those who covered up the truth will first try and undermine them by arguing with them with no particular proof that holds on to it. And then if they can't do that, they will make fun. And then he says, وَمَنْ أَظْلَمَ, who is more unjust, مِمَّنْ ذُكِرَ بِآيَاتِ رَبِّهِ, and when he is reminded of the signs of his Rabb, فَأَعْرَضَ, he ignores it, he turns away, فَأَعْرَضَ عَنْهَا, وَنَسِيَ, and he forgets مَا قَدَّمَتْ يَدَاهُ, what he has sent ahead. So he doesn't think of the akhirah. Inna ja'alna, now Allah says what happens. Inna ja'alna ala qulubihim akinnatan an yafqahuhu. So we have placed on their hearts a seal, an akinna, which prevents the light of guidance from entering. This, they brought it upon themselves. وَفِي آذَانِهِمْ وَقْرًا, and their hearing becomes a little bit hard. They cannot hear. وَإِن تَدْعُوهُمْ إِلَى الْهُدَى, and if you call them to guidance, فَلَنْ يَهْتَدُوا إِذًا أَبَدًا, they will never follow the right course. So there's a barrier in their ears. They hear, but they do not listen. So let's go over both of them. The hearts prevent any revelation from entering. The ears do not listen, they only hear. So they may hear a lot of things, but nothing goes in. There's a difference between understanding and acting upon something, internalizing something, and just listening to it or just hearing it. So I'm not sure where that came from. Right, let's look at ayah 58. وَرَبُّكَ الْغَفُورُ ذُو الرَّحْمَةِ, and your Rabb is so forgiving. ذُو الرَّحْمَةِ, he owns mercy. You know, we say Dhul Karnain, we'll come to him in a minute. Somebody who owns mercy. لو يؤاخذهم بما كسبوا لعجل لهم العذاب. If he were to punish human beings for what they had earned, it would have come so quickly. بل لهم موعد لن يجدوا من دونه موئلا. But there's an appointed time, and that appointed time, موئلا, is like it's where you fence animals in. It's like a fenced area. There's no refuge, you're fenced in. He says there's an appointed time. But he starts off by saying, وَرَبُّكَ الْغَفُورُ ذُو الرَّحْمَةِ. You still have time to sort yourself out. If we were to be taken to task, like we take others to task, he says the punishment would have come really, really quickly. وَتِلْكَ الْقُرَىٰ أَهْلَكْنَا. And as for those towns, أهلكنا, halak means we destroyed them. أهلكناهم لما ظلموا, because they acted unjustly. وجعلنا لمهلكهم موعدا, and there's an appointed time for their destruction. Even towns were destroyed when they did wrong. A time and a place was set. And he's telling you and me now that we have been given this place. If we look at ayah 33 of surah number 8, he tells the Prophet, we will not punish them because you are amongst them. We will not punish them because they ask for forgiveness. And this sort of puts that together. Right, now we have this beautiful story of Prophet Musa and Prophet Khizr, and it's a phenomenal story. But before that, let's just have a look. If you look here, I have highlighted every kind of example. You've got heart there because they're seals, or rather akinna, and they're here, and I put an ear there but for your ears. And then you've got that eye, you could put it as you want. Now we're going to start here with Prophet Musa and Prophet Khizr. So when does this happen, first of all? So we have the Bani Israel who are 40 years in the desert. Now someone commented to Prophet Musa and tells Prophet Musa, I'm just giving you a little bit of a background. He says, I don't believe, he's telling Prophet Musa this. He says, I don't believe that there's anyone on earth more knowledgeable than you, Ya Musa. Now remember who Musa is. He's been granted the Torah, which is in essence a book next to the Quran. Just before the Quran we have the Torah. And Prophet Musa is perturbed. Remember, he has an immense amount of humility. So he tells Allah, Ya Allah, can you find me a more knowledgeable man, please? He desperately wanted to meet someone who would remind him of his limited knowledge. This is where this story comes from, by the way. Okay. So what happens? وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى. So when Musa لِفَتَاهُ said to this young man, Fatah is a young man, and this young man is Yusha bin Nun, لَا أَبْرَحُ حَتَّى أَبْلُغَ مَجْمَعَ الْبَحْرَيْنِ أَوْ أُمْضِيَ حُقُبًا. He said, I am going to keep on going. I'm not going to stop until I reach the merging of the two waters. So Allah tells him there is a man who is really knowledgeable, and you'll meet him at the merging of the two rivers. أَوْ أُمْضِيَ حُقُبًا, or I will just go on and on and on to find this man. Hukub is 80 years. It's an average lifetime. So basically he's telling this intern of his, it's an intern of his, Yusha bin Nun, and he says, look, I will not stop until I meet this man. I'll go on, and obviously the intern is saying, I'm going to come with you. فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ مَجْمَعَ بَيْنَهِمَا. So they reach the junction of these two rivers. نَسِيَ حُوتَهُمَا, and they forget their fish. So Hadith tells us that they cooked a fish, or they dried a fish, and they took a fish that was edible for them to this place. And فَاتَّخَذَ سَبِيلُهُ فِي الْبَحْرِ سَرَبًا, and they forgot their fish then. I'm going to tell you a little story so you know a little bit about it. So instructions from divinity to take a large fish that was either pre-cooked or pre-dried. They come to this place, a rock, where there's two meetings of, where there's the two seas that meet. Prophet Musa is sort of napping a little. Yusha bin Nun sees a bit of water splash on this fish, and this fish suddenly goes into the water, and he's thinking, I didn't see that didn't happen. This is a dead fish. Definitely that didn't happen. And he thinks maybe I dreamt about it, and he forgets about that incident completely. And Prophet Musa gets up and they go on their way. فَلَمَّا جَاوَزَ, but they'd gone a little further, and قَالَ لِفَتَاهُ, he tells his intern, or he tells this young man, آتِنَا غَدَاءَنَا, can you bring us that fish, that meal of ours? لَقَدْ لَقِينَا مِنْ سَفَرِنَا هَذَا, so I'm really tired from this journey. You can imagine it, okay? قَالَ أَرَأَيْتَ إِذْ أَوَيْنَا إِلَى الصَّخْرَةِ, he said, you know when we stopped at that rock where you went to sleep, فَإِنِّي نَسِيتُ الْحُوتَ, I forgot the fish. And he says, وَمَا أَنْسَانِيهُ, and I didn't, shaitan made me forget it. They say, I just imagined stuff. I imagined that fish flying over in the water, and I really didn't know what happened. And he says, وَاتَّخَذَ سَبِيلُهُ فِي الْبَحْرِ عَجَبًا, and the fish went into the water, and it was ajib. You know what ajib is, right? It was something that I couldn't imagine. Immediately Prophet Musa realizes this, and he says, قَالَ ذَلِكَ مَا كُنَّا نَبْغِي, this is what we're looking for. فَاتَّبِعْ عَلَى آثَارِهِمَا قَصَصًا, we have to go back to the boulder, and we've got to retrace our steps as closely as possible. So they go back, because that's the place he was supposed to meet him. He knew that that's where the miracle was going to happen. فَوَجَدَ عَبْدًا, and they got there, and they found Abdan. Abdan is Prophet Khidr. So they find Prophet Khidr, min ibadina, from our abd. Ataynahu, we granted him rahma. Remember right in the beginning we read, Allah is Dhur Rahma. We gave him mercy, min indina, from us. Mercy is guidance. وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِن لَدُنَّا ilma, and we taught him knowledge from ourselves. So we found a slave from one of our slaves, we've given him mercy, and we taught him knowledge from us. Now, as soon as Prophet Musa meets Prophet Khidr, there's a bird in front of them who takes a drop of water from the sea, and he pours it onto the ground, tiny bit of water. And Prophet Khidr tells Prophet Musa, do you know the secret of what the bird did? Our knowledge that little bit, he said, our knowledge compared to any knowledge, to divine knowledge, is like a drop before an infinite sea. Okay. So قال له Musa, so Musa says to him, هل أتبعك على أن تعلمني مما علمت رشدا, can I be your intern? Can I come with you? Can I be your student? Based on the hope, tu'allimuni, that you will teach me. Now we're talking about Musa, who is a recipient of the Torah. And I said, the most scholarly book before the Quran. Now he had an intern, but now he wants to be a student. قال, Khidr tells him, إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا, you won't survive this education. And that tells you that Prophet Khidr had done his research, and he knows what Musa is all about. He knows Musa is impulsive when it comes to the truth. He cannot stand anyone being unjust. He knows what Prophet Musa is like. Remember, even Bani Israel asked him anything, straight up the mountain to God. Remember when we looked at, if you looked at the story of Musa, when he sees the Bani Israel and the person from the Pharaoh fighting, he goes straight away to separate them. So he knows about him. He's done his research about him. وَكَيْفَ تَصْبِرُ عَلَى مَا لَمْ تُحِطْ بِهِ خُبْرًا, and he says, you know what? How are you gonna have patience? How are you gonna, you won't have this patience without this comprehensive knowledge. You can't stay quiet. So there is something in Musa's personality. It's difficult for him to hold back. Remember when he saw the women waiting for water, had to go straight and help. It's positive impulsiveness, by the way. So you can see I've drawn it there. You've got the fish there, if you can see that. Kala, this is Musa. He said, Satajiduni, you will find me inshallah sabiran, you will find me patient. وَلَا أَعْسِي لَكَ أَمْرًا, I will not do isyan, I will not disobey you in anything, in any amr. قال فَإِنِ اتَّبِعْتَنِي, if you will follow me, فَلَا تَسْأَلْنِي, don't ask me and shay'in about anything, حَتَّى أُحْدِثَ لَكَ مِنْهُ ذِكْرًا, until I tell you myself about it. That's a condition. فَانْطَلَقَ, so they went ahead. حَتَّى إِذَا رَكِبَ فِي السَّفِينَةِ, until they got onto a safina, onto a boat. خَرَكَهَا, خَرَكَهَا means to tear off. So they go in, and you can imagine he just tears off a plank. قال, Musa said, أَخَرَكْتَهَا لِتُغْرِكَ أَهْلَهَا, you took off a plank off the boat so that we may drown? لَكَ جِئْتَ شَيْئًا إِمْرًا, my goodness. What you've done is totally illogical. Imra is something that is unethical. It's illogical. Immediately said Kala, Alam akul innaka lan tastati'a ma'i sabra, did I not tell you that you will not be able to have patience with me? Oh, Kala, he says, La tu'akhidhni, please don't take me to task for this. Bima nasit, I forgot, I'm really sorry. Don't tell me off for forgetting, I'm sorry. Wala turhikni min amri usra. You know, it's please don't constrain me, don't tell me to go away, take it easy on me, it's difficult for me. Wantalaka, so they went. Hatta idha lakiya ghulaman, so they saw this young boy. Fakatalahu, and Khizr killed him. Kala, akatalta nafsan, you killed a soul, zakiyatan, a pure soul. This is a young boy. بغير نفس, he's innocent. لَكَ جِئْتَ شَيْئًا نُكْرًا, what you have done, nukra comes from munkar. No one will say this is acceptable. No religion, no human being in the world will say what you've done is right. It makes no sense at all. Qala, he said, أَلَمْ أَقُلْ لَكَ إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا, did I not tell you that you will not be able to have patience with me? Musa says, Qala in sa'altuka, if I ask you anything and share about anything ba'daha after this, فَلَا تُصَاحِبْنِي, then you know what? Don't make me your companion. قَدْ بَلَغْتَ مِنْ لَدُنِّي عُذْرًا, and you will have found an excuse to tell me to go. فَانْطَلَقَ, so they went. حَتَّى إِذَا أَتَيَا أَحْلَ قَرْيَةٍ, and they came to a people of a town. إِسْتَطْعَمَا أَحْلَهَا فَأَبَوْا أَنْ يُضَيِّفُوهُمَا فَوَجَدَ فِيهَا جِدَارًا, and they asked these people for food, and the people weren't hospitable at all. They didn't give food, they refused. But they found in there a wall. فِيهَا جِدَارًا يُرِيدُ أَنْ يَنْقَضَّ, a wall that wanted to fall. It means it looked like it was going to fall any minute. فَأَقَامَهُ, so he put it straight up. That's what Khidr did. Qala, now remember, he didn't ask questions. He's very smart. Musa is not asking a question. He says, لو شئت لاتخذت عليه أجرا, you could have taken some money for this. They were so inhospitable. He didn't ask a question. And Khidr says, قال هذا فراق بيني وبينك, this we will separate. This is a separation for me and you. سأنبئك, I will inform you بتأويلي, of the explanation, ما لم تستطيع عليه صبر, for what you didn't have any patience at all. Now before we go there, I'll show you how I've done it. So I've drawn the boat there. I got another, this is the explanation here. I'll just take this off so you can see it. And I put another boat there where the explanation comes, which is now. You could do that. I put a little guy there and I put a cross because he killed him. I've put the explanation for nukra and imra because these are two words that he uses, unethical and illogical, and no one can make any sense of it. Okay, so, and I put a wall there, by the way. Okay, let's see what happens. You can see the pictures there. Amma safinatu, he said, as for the boat, فَكَانَتْ لِمَسَاكِينَ, it belonged to some poor people, يَعْمَلُونَ فِي الْبَحْرِ, who wanted to work in the sea. فَأَرَدْتُ أَنْ أَعِيبَهَا, and I wanted to create a flaw in it. وَكَانَ وَرَاءَهُمْ مَلِكٌ, because there was a king who wanted to expand his navy. يَأْخُذُ كُلُّ سَفِينَةٍ غَصْبًا, and he was confiscating all the boats. So if this was damaged, he would not take it. وَأَمَّا الْكُلَامُ, and he says, as for the young boy, فَكَانَ أَبَوَاهُ مُؤْمِنٍ, his parents were really good believers. فَخَشِينَا أَن يُرْهِقَهُمَا طُغْيَانًا وَكُفْرًا, and he would have had, in other words, remember, فَخَشِينَا na, there is we, that means this is in collaboration with Allah. So he's saying that with Allah, Allah has told me to do this. He would have had a negative impact on his parents. In other words, society would have a criminal amongst them, and here I am saving society from a criminal. Okay? And he's using the word na as in this is Allah. Here we go, you can see it. Let me go for you. Hold on. طغيانا وكفرا. I'm sorry, but you'll have to look at Ayah 81 in your Quran, because this is still Ayah 80. So look at Ayah 81, which says فَأَرَدْنَا, we intended. So don't look at Ayah 80 here. I'll go back to my Quran so you can see it. So Ayah 80 is in my Quran. فَأَرَدْنَا أَن يُبْدِلَهُمَا, we intended to replace them, give them a child better than this, who in purity and nearer in compassion. So that's Ayah 81. And aradna means that there is a unity in intent of Allah and Khizr in all these things. Okay, this is not a license for somebody to make a decision to take somebody's life or do something on their own basis. This is only done for something where Allah instructs a prophet or instructs one of his own to do something like that, like he instructed Prophet Ibrahim to bring the knife to Prophet Ismail. Okay, let's go to Ayah 82. Let me just mention a little thing about this before I go to Ayah 82. Often when we look at these stories, we tend to think of them with intellect and reason. Intellect, there is a place for it, definitely. Intellect is like a knife, but it cannot stitch things together. Iman stitches things together. Very often, there are dimensions of life we cannot understand, especially where divinity is involved. And that is why right in the beginning it started off by telling you and me, you've got to see the role of divinity in everything. There are dimensions of life that we have to have trust and iman on. Okay, let's go to the wall. وَأَمَّا الْجِدَارُ, as for the wall, it belonged to two orphan boys, he says. فَكَانَ لِغُلَامَيْنِ يَتِيمَيْنِ فِي الْمَدِينَةِ, in the town. وَكَانَ تَحْتَهُ كَنْزٌ لَهُمَا, underneath was a treasure. وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا, their father was a really good man. So رَادَ رَبُّكَ, Allah wanted أَن يَبْلُغَ أَشُدَّهُمَا, that when they became bulug, they would be able to get their treasure. وَيَسْتَخْرِجَ كَنْزَهُمَا, they can take out their treasure. رَحْمَةً مِّن رَبِّكَ, which be a mercy from their Rabb. وَمَا فَعَلْتُهُ عَنْ أَمْرِي, and I didn't do anything on my own accord. ذَلِكَ تَأْوِيلُ مَا لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ عَلَيْهِ صَبْرًا, and that is what you didn't have any patience about. So Prophet Khizr is saying, this is everything I've done is from Allah. So let's look at the three things that we've got to look here. The first thing was saving someone from economic trouble, right? So we looked at the boat. The second thing was saving society from a criminal. Aradna, this is from Allah. And the third thing was social welfare, taking care of those who are vulnerable or taking care of the orphans. Now we find test of authority or test of power, and we look at Dhul Qarnayn. So Dhul Qarnayn is known as Cyrus. Qarn is a horn, and it's called two horns. He's known as Cyrus. He's a Persian known as Cyrus. His crown had two horns. It is said that Persia had two kingdoms, and he reunited the two kingdoms and then expanded the area. So Maybe that is why he's called Dhul Qarnayn. There are many other explanations, but let's give this. Some said that's how he tied his hair. Lots of different explanations. So we find that and I mentioned this before, that the Quraysh sent somebody to the Jews of Medina to say, there's this prophet, or we want to ask him difficult questions. And one of the questions was about Zulkarnain. So وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ, they ask you about Zulkarnain. قُلْ سَأَتْرُ عَلَيْكُم مِّنْهُ ذِكْرًا, I will tell you some account of him. Minhu, a little bit about him. إِنَّا مَكَّنَّا لَهُ فِي الْأَرْضِ, we established him in the earth. وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ سَبَبًا, we gave him a means of access to everything. So he had a combination of power and guidance, and he uses his power here, as we can see, to establish justice. So in other words, we gave him every resource at his disposal to be able to help him. فَأَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا, so he went on a mission. So this is his first mission, and he goes towards the Mediterranean. حَتَّى إِذَا بَلَغَ مَغْرِبَ الشَّمْسِ, he reaches a place where the sun sets. Okay. وَجَدَهَا تَغْرُبُ فِي عَيْنٍ حَمِيَّةٍ, and there he finds these murky waters, Black Sea maybe. وَجَدَ عِنْدَهَا قَوْمًا, and he finds a people there. قُلْنَا يَا ذَا الْقَرْنَيْنِ, and they say, O Dhul Qarnayn, إِمَّا أَن تُعَذِّبَ وَإِمَّا أَن تَتَّخِذَ فِيهِمْ حُسْنًا. You know, they say, either punish. So Allah is telling Zulkarnain, how are you going to deal with these people? Are you going to punish them, or are you going to give them a benefit? So let's see your justice, let's see your leadership, in other words. So you can see, this is what I've put there on my Quran. I'll leave you there for a minute so you can see it. Okay. Qala. So this is his justice, his leadership values. He says, Qala amma man dhalama, those who are unjust, فَسَوْفَ نُعَذِّبُهُ, they will be punished. There's a public declaration against crime. ثُمَّ يُرَدُّ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهِ, and they'll be returned to their Rabb. In other words, if they've committed murder, if they've, they will be killed. فَيُعَذِّبُهُ عَذَابًا نُكْرًا, and they will have a punishment which will deter others from doing the crime they committed. وَأَمَّا مَنْ آمَنَ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا, but those who believe and do good deeds, فَلَهُ جَزَاءً لِلْحُسْنَى, they will have a good reward. وَسَنَقُولُ لَهُ مِنْ أَمْرِنَا يُسْرًا, and we will tell them about, in other words, we will speak to him in our command, our words. Okay. So that's his first place that he went to, and his first mission of justice. So ثم أتبع السبب. So now this is the second mission, right? حتى إذا بلغ مطلع الشمس. So he comes to a place where the sun is rising. So he goes from one end to the other, east to west. وجدها تطلع على قوم, he finds it rising on a people. لم نجعل لهم من دونهما سترا. They were a bit primitive in their building of houses because they had no roofs. Sitra, there was no cover on their houses, so the sun rose over them. Okay. كذلك, even so, وقد أحطنا بما لديه خبرا. So they were dealt. كذلك means they were dealt in the same way as the first lot. Same justice. If you're criminals, you will be punished. If you're not criminals, good reward for you, and the punishment will be such that it will deter you from doing those things again. ثم أتبع سببا. So now this is the third mission. Okay. حتى إذا بلغ بين السدين. So now he comes a place. Sad is a large mountain, a mountain which has water flowing. So he comes between two mountains where water is flowing. وجد من دونهما, is in the valley, in the middle of the valley. قوما, he finds people. لا يكادون يفقهون قولا, and these people don't have a proper language. It's very difficult to understand. It's very difficult to communicate with them. They couldn't communicate very well. But there must have been some sort of communication, because what do they tell him? قالوا يا ذا القرنين. They say, oh Dhul Qarnayn. I guess they signed it to him. إن يأجوج ومأجوج. They say there are these people, Ya'juj and Ma'juj. مفسدون في الأرض. They create problems in the earth. فهل نجعل لك خرجا على أن تجعل بيننا وبينهم سدا. So we are able to extract some money, or in other words, from our budget we can get some money to give to you, so you can build a barrier, a sadda, a dam between us and them. So basically they're saying that these two are behind the mountain. They're invaders. They're called Yajuj and Majuj. They come and raid us, and then they run away behind the mountain, and we really don't know what to do. So he says, Qala ma makkanni fihi rabbi khair. My Rabb has given me, what my master has given me is better. I don't need your funds. However, fa'ayuni biquwwatin. I need your help, as in I need your manpower. Aj'al baynakum wa baynahum radma. And we will make between us and them a barrier. We'll make something between us. Atuni, bring me zubur al-hadid. Bring me bricks of iron, or blocks of iron. Hatta idha sawa bayna sadafain. And we will build these, we will put these bricks together in between, and we'll make a barrier between us and them. Kalan fukhu. And then we will blow, when you're saying blow fire, until these melt. Hatta idha ja'alahu naran. And we'll have this fire. Kala atuni ufrig alayhi katra. And then in between we will reinforce this with copper or brass, whatever you want to call it, and we'll, in these bricks of iron, we will pour copper over it. So basically it'll become so smooth that Yajuj and Majuj will not be able to scale it. فَمَسْتَعُوا. They will not be able to scale it. أَن يَظْهَرُوهُ. Nor will وَمَسْتَطَاعُوا لَهُ نَكْبًا. Neither will they be able to make a hole in it. So you can see what I've done, my two mountains. I could show it to you in my Quran as well. So you can see the two mountains there as well. I'll show it on here. You can see it probably a bit better. And I've highlighted bits in there as well. Kala. Now look what he says. His attitude. He doesn't say, look what I did for you. He says, هذا رحمة من ربي. This is a mercy from my Rabb. فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ رَبِّي. When the promise of my Rabb comes, جَعَلَهُ دَكَّا. It'll all become level. وَكَانَ وَعْدُ رَبِّي حَقًّا. And the promise of my Rabb is true. So basically he's saying, when the day of judgment comes, or when the time comes when my Rabb will put everything, make everything flat, this will go as well. Until then, he's basically telling them indirectly, until then this is going to remain. So this will remain for a long time, and Yajuj and Majuj will not be able to scale it. Do we want to talk about Yajuj and Majuj? Maybe another time. Right now we're going to go to 99-108, and it's Jannah and Jahannam. وَتَرَكْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ. And on that day they will come out. يَمُوجُ. Moj is like waves. فِي بَعْضٍ. They will come out wave after wave after wave. وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ فَجَمَعْنَاهُمْ جَمْعًا. And when the trumpet will be blown, they will all be gathered together. وَأَرَضْنَا جَهَنَّمَ يَوْمَئِذٍ. And Jahannam will be brought forward on that day. لِلْكَافِرِينَ أَرْضًا. In other words, it will be right in front. It will be brought forward. الَّذِينَ كَانَتْ أَعْيُنُهُمْ. Those whose eyes are veiled. فِي غِطَاءٍ. In a cover. عَنْ ذِكْرِ. From our reminder. وَكَانُوا لَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ سَمْعًا. And they can't hear. So we remember we talked about the hearts being veiled. Normally it talks about qalb being veiled. Here Allah is saying the eyes are veiled. So in this surah the signs of Day of Judgment are seen. And he says, أَفَحَسِبَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. Do those who cover up the truth think أَن يَتَّخِذُوا عِبَادِي مِن دُونِ أَوْلِيَاءَ. That they can take my servants to be guardians besides me. Inna a'tadna jahannama lil kafirina nuzula. We have prepared Jahannam. Now nuzula is like the like starters. It's like a bit of sarcasm here. He says, we have prepared Jahannam. The preparation is like starters for them. Basically what Allah is saying, that let's start again. أَن يَتَّخِذُوا إِبَادِي مِن دُونِ أَوْلِيَاءَ. You cannot take my servants to be guardians besides me. I am your guardian. قُل. Now, هَلْ نُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِالْأَخْسَرِينَ أَعْمَالًا. He says, shall I inform you of the greatest losers in the world, or greatest losers in those who work? الَّذِينَ ذَلَّ سَعْيَهُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Those whose efforts were exhausted in working for the world. وَهُمْ يَحْسَبُونَ أَنَّهُمْ يُحْسِنُونَ صُنْعًا. And they think that they have really built something up. So in other words, by extension he's saying, if you did not connect your dunya to your akhirah, if all you thought about was your dunya, if all your motives were worldly, then you will be the greatest of losers. He says, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, because they covered up the truth about بِآيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ, about the signs of their Rabb, وَلِقَائِهِ, and that they will be accountable. فَحَبِطَتْ أَعْمَالُهُمْ, all their deeds are nullified. فَلَا نُقِيمُ لَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَزْنًا, and their balance or their weights on the day of judgment, there will be nothing there. ذَلِكَ جَزَاهُمْ جَهَنَّمْ, their recompense is Jahannam, بِمَا كَفَرُوا, because they covered up the truth. وَاتَّخَذُوا آيَاتِ وَرُسُلِي هُزُوًا, because they covered up the truth and because they laughed at divine guidance. But then إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, those who believe and who do good deeds, كَانَتْ لَهُمْ جَنَّاتُ الْفِرْدَوْسِ نُزُلًا, their starters will be the highest place of Jannah, which is Firdaus. I think Firdaus is a Farsi word as well, but that's the highest level of Jannah. That's their starters. They start right at the top. خالدين فيها, always living there. لا يبغون عنها ولا, and they will never want to come out of it. So that's how I've highlighted it. And finally, the last two ayat, really pretty. قل, say, لو كان البحر, if the seas were midada. Midad is ink. It comes from mud, because ink is an extension of the hand and thoughts and understanding onto paper. So my thoughts and my understanding come to my hand, I put the ink on and I write it. It's such a beautiful word. That's what ink is. قُلْ لَوْ كَانَ الْبَحْرُ مِدَادًا, if the seas were ink, an extension of the words لِكَلِمَاتِ رَبِّ, of your Rabb, لَنَفِدَ الْبَحْرُ قَبْلَ أَن تَنْفَدَ كَلِمَاتُ رَبِّ, the seas would finish before the words of your Rabb. وَلَوْ جِئْنَا بِمِثْلِهِ مَدَدًا, even if you extended it with another book. So the extension of divinity is in a book, is in the Quran. You'll never say, I've finished, I've learned it, I know it. There's always more like it. There's always more to learn from it. قُلْ, say, إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ, I am only a human being like you. يُوحَى إِلَيَّ, it has been revealed to me. أَنَّمَا إِلَهُكُمْ إِلَهٌ وَاحِدٌ, that there is, your God is one God. فَمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ, and therefore those who hope to meet the Rabb. So akhira, important, certainty and accountability. فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا, they will do good deeds. وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا, and they will not in any way do shirk with their Rabb. Absolutely phenomenal surah. It's got so many stories. Highly recommended to be recited on the night of Friday or on a Friday. So inshallah we will be able to do that. That in essence is Sura Al Kahf. I will just go back to the first bit. So in essence you've got 9 sections. He started off with, the Quran is very simple, very straight. Lots of different ways in which he teaches you and me. So we have the test of faith, the test of wealth, the test of obedience, the test of knowledge, and the test of authority. I will